In the grand lecture hall of the prestigious Galactic University on Nexus Prime, I, Professor Zakkax, stood before a sea of eager faces representing 37 different species. Well, 36 if you discount the human exchange student who somehow managed to slip through our rigorous admission process. Not that I have anything against humans, mind you. They're absolutely adorable with their fragile bones and soft, squishy bodies. And that, dear students, I said, adjusting my primary sensory membrane, brings us to today's fascinating topic, the evolutionary disadvantages of Class 3 Deathworld species, with a special focus on humans. The amphitheater erupted in chirps, clicks, and various forms of alien laughter. Even the crystalline beings from Sigma Crystallis vibrated in amusement, their surfaces sparkling with mirth. Now I warbled, my secondary appendages waving for silence. Let's maintain our professional composure. After all, we are the Advanced Species Research Council's premier institution for xenobiological studies. Though I must admit, studying humans is rather like studying how a paper ship survives in a plasma storm. More laughter. I projected a hologram of a human skeletal structure, watching my students' reactions of disbelief and pity. Observe these calcium-based support structures. No reinforced titanium core, no auxiliary exoskeleton, not even a basic acid defense system. How they managed to achieve spaceflight without dissolving themselves is beyond even my 3 brains. The human student in the back row, I noticed, was taking particularly detailed notes. Poor thing probably needed all the help it could get to understand its own species' limitations. I decided to be extra thorough in my explanation, out of pure scientific kindness, of course. Consider their environmental tolerances, I continued, pulling up another hologram. A mere 20-degree temperature range for optimal functioning. Pressure requirements so specific they need artificial containment suits for 90% of habitable worlds. And don't even get me started on their pathetic radiation resistance. A student from the gaseous clouds of Neptune raised a vapor tendril. Professor, is it true they can't even regenerate lost limbs? Ah, an excellent observation. I beamed all 7 of my eye spots in approval. Indeed, they possess almost no regenerative capabilities. A single puncture wound can end their existence. They require external medical intervention for the simplest of injuries. In fact, I paused for dramatic effect, they can die from merely consuming the wrong type of organic matter. The lecture hall buzzed with incredulous murmurs. A Zentorian in the front row actually secreted stress hormones in sympathy. But surely, interrupted a crystalline student, their facets glowing with confusion, there must be some explanation for their survival as a species. I clicked my mandibles in what passed for a condescending smile among my kind. Ah, yes, the great mystery of human survival. Some of my more imaginative colleagues suggest it's their supposed adaptability or their bizarre ability to continue functioning when damaged. Nonsense, of course. The simple truth is they've been extraordinarily lucky, nothing more. If only I knew then how spectacularly wrong I was about to be proven. The announcement of the annual interstellar sports competition came during my 3rd period lecture on evolutionary superiority. The holoscreen materialized in the center of the amphitheater, interrupting my fascinating dissertation on the advantages of having multiple hearts. Not that I was bitter about the timing. Greetings, sentient beings of the galaxy. The broadcaster's tentacles waved with practiced enthusiasm. The 847th Annual Interstellar Sports Competition registration is now open. This year's events will test strength, endurance, and survival skills in the legendary gravity wells of Tarox Prime. My students buzzed with excitement. Tarox Prime. Only the most physically elite specimens could handle its crushing gravitational forces. Even I, with my reinforced exoskeleton, had to wear a gravity suit during my research visits. The holoscreen shifted to show last year's champion, Ryxon Voss. All 4 meters of his crystalline form gleamed as he absorbed ambient radiation for dramatic effect. As returning champion, I welcome all worthy competitors. His resonant voice filled the chamber, though I use the term worthy quite specifically. The camera panned across his trophy collection. 12 consecutive victories, strength records in 17 gravity levels, the only being to complete the neutron star marathon without molecular degradation. Ryxon Voss wasn't just a champion. He was a force of nature crystallized into competitive form. This year, he continued, his facets pulsing with smug luminescence. I understand we have some Interesting applicants, including he paused, his crystal structure vibrating with barely contained amusement, a human. The lecture hall erupted in a cacophony of laughter, clicks, and electromagnetic pulses of disbelief. I had to activate my sonic dampeners to protect my auditory membranes. Then she walked into my classroom. Aria Rodriguez, standing barely 2 meters tall, her soft, pathetically vulnerable form clothed in what appeared to be standard human athletic wear. No exoskeleton, no gravity compensators, no visible technological enhancements whatsoever. Professor Zakkax, she spoke, her voice carrying an unsettling confidence. I'm here for your expert opinion on human physical capabilities, since you're the leading xenobiologist studying Class 3 Deathworld species. Several of my students began setting up betting pools before she even finished speaking. The odds against her surviving the first event started at 10,000 to 1. By the end of the class, they'd dropped to 8,000 to 1. Some fool apparently thought she had a chance. Miss Rodriguez, I addressed her with my most professionally condescending tone. While I admire your enthusiasm, perhaps you should review the competition parameters. The gravity on Tarax Prime is 3 times what humans consider normal. The atmospheric pressure alone would be about equivalent to 30 meters underwater on Earth, she interrupted, smiling. I free dive as a hobby. A Zentorian student's translator crackled. What is free dive? Oh, humans sometimes swim deep into their planet's liquid hydrogen oxide, without breathing equipment, for fun. The betting odds shifted to 7,500 to 1. Ryxon Voss himself materialized in our classroom via hologram, his crystalline form towering over Aria. How charming. A human who thinks holding her breath makes her a competitor. Tell me, soft one, have you ever experienced your cellular structure being compressed to near quantum density? Aria shrugged. No, but I did complete a marathon after breaking my leg once. Seemed like a waste to stop when I was already halfway done. The room fell silent. Even Ryxon's hologram flickered in confusion. I made a note to update my research on human psychological irregularities. Clearly, I had overlooked some crucial aspect of their mental processes. No sane species would consider continued locomotion with a compromised support structure to be normal behavior. The betting odds dropped to 5,000 to 1. In retrospect, we should have taken that as a warning sign. As head of the Advanced Species Research Council, I felt obligated to document the humans' training methods. All for scientific purposes, of course. Not because the betting odds had dropped to 3,000 to 1, and I had placed a small wager against her survival. That would be unprofessional. Subject continues bizarre preparation rituals I dictated into my research log, currently performing repetitive lifting motions with primitive metal weights while listening to rhythmic sound vibrations through audio devices, purpose unclear, possibly religious. The training facility's observation deck was crowded with various species, all pretending they weren't fascinated by the humans' activities. A group of gaseous beings had condensed themselves into tight clouds to get a better view. Even the facility's AI seemed interested, constantly adjusting its cameras to track Aria's movements. Professor, one of my research assistants, bubbled nervously. You should see these baseline readings. I extended an appendage to take the data pad, then promptly dropped it. This can't be correct. Run the tests again. We already did. 7 times the assistant's membrane rippled with concern. According to these results, she's been training in twice normal gravity, without a gravity suit. Impossible. The safety protocols were overridden. By her. She said, and I quote, if you're not cheating, you're not trying hard enough. Down in the training area, Aria finished her lifting routine and moved to what she called a punching bag. The reinforced material was designed to withstand impacts from Class 1 strength species. She had already destroyed 3 of them. Update to research log, I continued. Subject displays concerning signs of cognitive dissonance. When informed that sustained exposure to elevated gravity could cause permanent skeletal damage, subject responded with what appears to be a cultural expression: no pain, no gain. A commotion near the facility entrance drew my attention. Ryxon Voss had arrived for his daily training session, his crystalline form refracting light across the observation deck. He stopped abruptly at the sight of Aria. You're still here? His crystal lattice vibrated with derision. I assumed you would have shattered your fragile form by now. Aria paused her assault on the punching bag, sweat glistening on her skin. Another bizarre human feature. They leaked liquid when performing physical activities. Oh hey Ryxon, want to spar? The betting odds dropped to 2,500 to 1. Spar. With you his crystalline structure practically sparkled with amusement. I would dissolve your cellular structure with a single impact. Probably Aria agreed cheerfully, unwrapping the protective bands from her hands. But you'd have to hit me first. The facility's safety officer, a towering mass of sentient plasma contained in an environment suit, approached me with obvious distress. Professor, we have concerns. The humans' training methods are unorthodox. Explain. Well, yesterday she requested access to the environmental hazards chamber. She called it heat training. She remained in there for 2 hours at temperatures that would boil her internal fluids. And then she asked if we could make it hotter. The betting odds shifted to 2,000 to 1. I added another note to my research log. Subject demonstrates previously undocumented human traits. Possible mutation. Further study required. Current hypothesis: human contestant either possesses unprecedented adaptation capabilities or complete absence of survival instincts. Unable to determine which is more concerning. As I finished my notes, a crash echoed through the facility. Aria had just challenged the gravity control system's maximum settings, and won. One final note I added. Perhaps we have been approaching this all wrong. The question isn't whether humans are weak. The question is what kind of species looks at the impossible and treats it as a personal challenge. The betting odds dropped to 1,000 to 1. I began to worry about my research funding. The competition began on Tarox Prime's second moon, a barren rock chosen for its variable gravity fields. As the official scientific observer, I had a prime viewing position. Also, I needed to keep an eye on my rapidly diminishing research grant, now riding on odds of 500 to 1. First event announced the crystalline referee, her facets glowing with official importance. The gravity gauntlet. Competitors will traverse an obstacle course through rapidly shifting gravity fields, ranging from 0.1 to 5 times standard gravity. Ryxon Voss stepped up first, his crystalline form adapting instantly to the gravitational changes. 9 minutes, 42 seconds. A new course record. He turned to the crowd, absorbing their adulation like solar radiation. Then Aria walked up to the starting line. In shorts and a tank top, no gravity suit, no protective gear, just those ridiculous rubber-soled shoes she called sneakers. Human competitor, the referee's translator, crackled with concern. Your environmental protection seems to be malfunctioning. Oh, I'm not wearing any, Aria replied, stretching her limbs in ways that made several gelatinous spectators look away in horror. They throw off my balance. The medical team moved closer to the course. I began drafting her obituary. The signal sounded. Aria ran. What happened next defied every xenobiological principle I'd ever taught. In zero gravity, she used the obstacles like springboards, calculating trajectories that would have made a quantum computer jealous. In high gravity, she rolled. Actually rolled her soft, unprotected body under barriers that other competitors had to waste energy climbing over. 8 minutes, 17 seconds. The crowd's shocked silence was broken only by the sound of several betting terminals shorting out. Beginner's luck, Ryxon Voss growled, his crystal structure vibrating with barely contained fury. The pressure chamber will break her. In the pressure chamber. A sealed arena where atmospheric pressure increased gradually until competitors either submitted or passed out. Last year, Ryxon had set another record, 15 minutes at pressures equivalent to the core of a gas giant. Aria entered the chamber humming something about being under pressure. I made a note to study human musical references to death and doom. At 5 minutes, spectators began placing bets on how long until she collapsed. At 10 minutes, Ryxon's crystal structure began showing stress fractures. At 14 minutes, Aria started doing what she called jumping jacks to pass the time. At 16 minutes, she asked if anyone wanted to join her for a quick workout. The chamber's pressure sensors overloaded at 17 minutes. The event was called a tie, if only to prevent Ryxon from shattering himself in rage. "This is impossible," he screamed, his voice cracking like stressed crystal. "Humans are classified as soft-bodied fauna. Their cellular structure should have collapsed." "Oh," that Aria said, toweling off her neck. "Yeah, humans who free dive regularly can handle pretty intense pressures. Something about our spleen storing extra oxygen. I don't really understand the science, I just do it for fun." I frantically updated my research notes. Subject demonstrates unprecedented pressure adaptation. Previous classifications may require revision. Note: investigate human spleen functions immediately. The final event of the day was the endurance run. A simple test run until you stop. The track's gravity increased by 0.1 every hour. 3 hours in, half the competitors had dropped out. 6 hours in, only Ryxon and Aria remained. 9 hours in, Ryxon's crystalline form began to show signs of gravitational stress. 12 hours in, Aria asked if anyone had any water because she was getting a bit thirsty. The betting odds had completely inverted. The question was no longer if the human would survive, but how many more records she would break. "Professor," my research assistant whispered, "I think we may need to rewrite the textbooks." I watched as Aria began telling jokes to the medical team while running in 4 times normal gravity. "No," I replied. "We need to burn them." The final challenge took place in Tarox Prime's infamous Valley of Gravitational Tears, where natural phenomena created gravity waves that could tear apart a small moon. The betting odds had stabilized at 2-1 in Aria's favor, and my research grant was now large enough to fund a new wing of the university. Not that I was keeping track. "The rules are simple," announced the head judge, her plasma form crackling with anticipation. "Reach the summit of Mount Impossible. First one to plant their flag at the peak wins. No environmental suits allowed." The mountain rose before us, its peak disappearing into clouds of crystallized atmosphere. The gravity waves rippling across its surface made the whole thing look like it was breathing. Several spectators had to reconfigure their optical sensors just to look at it. "One small addition," Ryxon Voss announced, his crystalline form gleaming with malice. "I propose we each carry a burden, equal to our own body weight, to make things interesting." The crowd murmured. Adding weight in variable gravity was practically suicide. Even the judges looked concerned. "Sure," Aria shrugged, loading her pack. "I used to do weighted runs back home. Makes for good conditioning." I added another note to my research. "Subject continues to display concerning lack of self-preservation instincts. Possible species-wide characteristic requiring further study." The starting signal flashed. Both competitors began their ascent. For the first 1,000 meters, they matched pace. Ryxon's crystalline form adapted to each gravity wave, his structure shifting to maintain perfect balance. Aria kept falling, but every time she fell, she got back up. Sometimes with a laugh. Sometimes with what my translator identified as creative profanity, but always up. 2,000 meters, I dictated into my research log. Gravity waves increasing in intensity. Ryxon showing first signs of structural stress. Human competitor bleeding from multiple lacerations but appears to be singing. "What is that noise she's making?" my assistant asked, adjusting his auditory sensors. According to my cultural database, it's called Eye of the Tiger. Apparently, humans use rhythmic sound patterns to maintain physical performance. Fascinating. At 3,000 meters, the first major gravity wave hit. Ryxon anchored himself by partially crystallizing the air around him. Aria went flying. Straight up, about 50 meters. "Now this," she shouted as she fell. "This is what I call a challenge." She hit the ground hard enough to crack the rock. Then stood up, spat out a tooth, and kept climbing. 4,000 meters, I continued, my voice trembling. "Subject has sustained injuries that would incapacitate most species. Continuing performance suggests either unprecedented pain tolerance or complete neural malfunction. Local gravity now exceeds 7 times standard." Ryxon was no longer adapting smoothly. His crystalline structure showed dozens of stress fractures, but more concerning was his mental state. Every time he looked back to see Aria still climbing, still smiling, more cracks appeared. "Why won't you break?" he screamed, his voice resonating through his fractured form. Aria paused to wrap a bandage around a particularly bad cut on her arm. "Break? This is fun. Reminds me of that time I got caught in an avalanche while mountaineering. Had to dig myself out with a broken arm. Good times." The betting odds shifted to 1-3 in Aria's favor. 5,000 meters. The air grew thin. Crystalline, Ryxon's natural advantage should have made this part easy for him, but he'd spent too much energy on the climb, too much focus on trying to break the unbreakable. "This is impossible," he gasped, his voice crackling like fractured crystal. "Your bones should have collapsed. Your muscles should have torn. Your lungs should have burst." Aria passed him, moving steadily despite her injuries. "You know what's funny about humans, Ryxon? We're really bad at accepting limitations. Tell us something's impossible," she grinned, blood staining her teeth. "We take it as a personal challenge." The summit loomed above them. One final gravity wave, the strongest yet, pulsed down the mountain face. Ryxon, in a desperate move, tried to crystallize his entire body into a single, unbreakable form. He shattered. As the medical teams rushed to collect his fragments, Aria reached out and caught his flag before it could fall. She carried both flags to the summit. In this, her final display of strength wasn't about winning. It was about helping a fallen competitor. "Subject has achieved summit," I recorded, my appendages trembling. "Local gravity approximately 9 times standard. Current working theory humans are not evolved to survive. They are evolved to triumph over the very concept of survival." Aria planted both flags at the peak, then sat down, pulled out something she called a granola bar, and started eating as if she'd just finished a light workout. The medical team finally reached her, their diagnostic equipment going haywire. Multiple fractures, they reported, severe muscle strain, internal bruising, dangerous levels of stress hormones. "Oh good," Aria said between bites. "New personal record then." I made one final note in my research log before the betting computers exploded. Conclusion: previous assumption about human physical capabilities was critically flawed. They are not weak. They simply experience physics as more of a suggestion than a law. Addendum. Thank whatever deity you believe in that their friendly. The emergency meeting of the Advanced Species Research Council was called to order amidst chaos. 17 different species of scientists were arguing in 34 different languages. My research notes had been downloaded over 1 million times. 3 quantum computers had crashed trying to recalculate human potential. Order: the council president's bioluminescent form pulsed with authority. "We must address the human question with proper scientific rigor." "Proper scientific rigor," I laughed, all 7 of my eye spots twitching. Our proper scientific rigor just got outperformed by a human who treated a Class 5 gravity wave like a trampoline. On the main screen, footage from the competition played on repeat. Aria was being interviewed in the medical bay while getting multiple fractures treated. She was asking if she could get copies of her medical scans for training reference. Professor Zakkax, the council president, turned her glow toward me. "As our leading expert on Class 3 Deathworld species, what is your updated analysis?" I projected my revised thesis onto the central hologram. The title read, "Humans when Evolution Develops a Sense of Humor." "Distinguished colleagues," I began, my voice modulator set to maximum stability. "We have been approaching human physiology from a fundamentally flawed perspective. We assumed their lack of natural weapons, armor, or environmental adaptations made them weak. We were wrong. These aren't bugs in their design. They're features." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. "Consider. Their soft bodies don't limit damage. They adapt to it. Their fragile bones? They heal stronger. Their inefficient respiratory system allows for unprecedented endurance. Even their bizarre perspiration mechanism gives them thermal regulation that most species require technology to match." The footage showed Aria doing one-armed push-ups while waiting for her bone knitter treatment. But most importantly, I continued, "We completely misunderstood their evolutionary advantage. It's not physical at all. It's psychological. They don't accept limitations. They see them as personal challenges. Tell a human something is impossible, and they will redesign the laws of physics out of pure spite." A crystalline scientist raised a faceted appendage. "And the betting results?" "Ah, yes," I adjusted my membranes nervously. The Galactic betting system had to be rebooted after the final event. The odds fluctuations created a mathematical singularity. On the bright side, my research is now funded for the next 3 centuries. The council president's glow dimmed thoughtfully. "Your recommendations?" "First, we completely revise our classification of human physical capabilities. Second, we update our educational materials to reflect their actual potential. And third, I paused for effect. We pray they never realize they're supposed to be the weak ones. At that moment, Aria burst into the council chamber, her recently healed legs carrying her with disturbing speed. "Professor, I just had the best idea. You know how you said humans couldn't survive in quantum space?" Every scientist in the room developed an immediate and pressing need to be elsewhere. "Miss Rodriguez," I sighed, already dreading her response. "Quantum space literally unmakes matter at a subatomic level." "Yeah, but has anyone actually tried to run a marathon in it?" The betting computers, which had just finished rebooting, spontaneously combusted. My final research note, added later that evening update to human classification urgently required. Proposed new category Deathworld Class 0. Warning label to be attached to all future documentation: do not tell humans something is impossible. They will take it personally. As for Ryxon Voss, once his crystalline form was reassembled, he became Aria's biggest supporter. He was last seen entering a human gym, muttering something about starting light with only twice his body weight. The next year's competition had to be redesigned completely. We ran out of impossible challenges. And me? I'm writing this from my new research facility, funded entirely by betting profits. Our current project? Studying why humans call clearly lethal activities sports. Some mysteries of the universe might be better left unsolved.